What's going on, guys? It's Cimo, and today I'm bringing to you my $30 3 Cyberse Link structure deck profile. Now, obviously my channel focuses more on the competitive side of the game, and if you're wanting to make a deck like this, it might not be the best thing to take to a regional or YCS by any stretch of the imagination. But if this is a deck that maybe it's for a newer player, or maybe someone who wants to play the game on a budget, you can just pick up 3 of the latest Cyberse Link structure deck, make a build like this, and actually have a good time. So I wanted to make that for all my budget players out there who want to have something a little bit more competitive than just what comes in the box itself. And for those of you guys who don't know, I am giving away a copy of the Cyberse Link structure deck as well. Check down in the description for the Gleam link for all the details of that giveaway. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. So this is a really interesting deck because I decided the focus of this deck should be a balance of aggro as well as swarm, because the Cyberse monsters are all very interesting, and we're going to get into that as we go into the profile. So to start off, 3 copies of Balancer Lord. Now, Balancer Lord's cool because at the cost of 1,000 life points, you get to get another normal summon of a Cyberse monster, which we do play a lot of in this deck. But additionally, if it's banished, you get to special summon another Cyberse monster from your hand, and that combos really well with the Cyberse quick play spell, which we're going to get to a little bit later on. I don't want to say Balancer Lord is like the heart and soul of the deck, but it's definitely a very good key playmaker, especially once you see the rest of the cards we're playing and how it synergizes with the rest of the deck. So to combo with that, we have 3 copies of Rom Claudia. So Rom Claudia, in addition to all these cards being heavy beaters, Rom Claudia has like a Wolf Bark-like effect where it's able to special summon a Cyberse monster and just pretty much bring it back out onto the forward if it's destroyed by battle. So it has a way to kind of float into other Cyberse monsters, and then when it's normal summon, you get to add Cyberse cards back to your hand. So that's really cool, kind of, again, just keeping your resources full and allowing you to just keep depleting them onto the board and send them crashing into your opponent. Now, these next 2 cards are also to help synergize with these normal summons. We have 3 copies of Boot Staggered. Now, Boot Staggered is a 2300 level 5, but you're not going to be tribute summoning him. So when a Cyberse monster is normal summoned, you get to special summon Boot Staggered from your hand. So that's a way to just, again, get more monsters onto the board and start inflicting as much damage to our opponent as possible. And then to combo with that, we also have 3 copies of Backup Secretary. Now, Backup Secretary reads, if you control a Cyberse monster, you get to special summon Backup Secretary from your hand. So you may only be able to use that once per turn, but it's a very important combo piece because it allows you, again, just off of 1 card, you're able to summon multiple just because they only require a Cyberse monster being on the field or being normal summoned, and then you can go from 1 monster into like 3 or 4 and just start overwhelming your opponent. So these are kind of like the core components of the Cyberse engine we got going on here. Backup Secretary is also very important for the quick play spell as well, but we'll get into that a little bit later. To supplement that, we also are playing 3 copies of Launcher Commander. Now, Launcher Commander is kind of like Exiled Force for my OG viewers, but essentially, all other Cyberse monsters you control gain 300 attack and defense while it's on the field, which is really good because it boosts stuff like, it boosts stuff up to 2,000, puts the Rom Claudia up to 21, it puts the Boot Stagger up to 26, so that's actually some pretty formidable numbers. And then in addition to that, once per turn, you can tribute a Cyberse monster, target a face-up monster on the field, and destroy it. And that's really powerful because that's the removal that this deck has at its disposal, at least in monster form. Keep in mind that Launcher Commander is a soft once per turn, so if you resurrect another copy, you're able to use that effect multiple times. And that's really important, especially with cards like Rom Claudia or anything else that's going to be resurrecting these monsters from the graveyard, which we'll get into later. Now, the rounding up the Cyberse lineup, we do have 1 copy of Duel Assembworm. This is a card I was going back and forth on. You could possibly play a second one, but I feel like 1 is okay because you don't want to have multiple copies of this card because it's not like the greatest card, but the 2800 attack value is good, especially considering this deck plays a lot of graveyard recursion, and if you need something that has just good removal or just a decent body, it is able to be special summoned via its effects, so that's something to keep in mind as well. Now, we're only playing 3 other monsters. We're playing 2 copies of Summoner Monk and 1 Mathematician. The Summoner Monk is just to turbo out our Cyberse monsters onto the field and start getting our plays going, because as you noticed, a lot of the Cyberse cards kind of rely on one another to be on the field to start swarming the board. So even though Summoner Monk has a cost of discarding a spell, if it enables the rest of our hand, that's perfectly fine. And then the 1 Mathematician's good because not only will it fuel our graveyard for maybe something for potential synergy later in the turn, but also also, it's going to allow us to draw a card if Mathematician is destroyed, so it gives the deck a little bit of draw power as well, so that's why I want to make sure I included him. Next up, we have 3 copies of Cynet Backdoor. Now, this card is insane, especially considering for it's a Cyberse-based deck. Now, Cynet Backdoor is a quick play spell, and it allows you to target a Cyberse monster you control, banish it, and then you get to add a Cyberse monster from deck to hand whose attack is lower than what you banish. So what you want to use this for primarily is if your opponent is threatening any of your Cyberse monsters with removal, you can use the Backdoor, banish the Cyberse monster, you get to add a card to your hand. It's most likely going to be the one with 1200 attack that can special summon itself out for free. Then during the next standby phase, you're going to be able to special summon it out onto the field, and since you added the one that's able to special summon itself if you control a Cyberse, you now have a free monster on the field, and plus the one that got special summoned back to the field from being banished can now attack directly. So this card is incredibly powerful. If you use it on the Assembworm, if it has 1400 attack, it will go back up to 28 because it doesn't retain its original value from when it was initially special summoned. So that's another cool trick as well. This card is just very good overall, and I wouldn't want to play to any less than 3 in this deck. Now moving on, we have 3 copies of Shuffle Reborn. Now, the reason we're playing so many copies of Shuffle Reborn is because, again, aggro is the name of the game. We're trying to get in and just get as much damage and get as many monsters on the field as possible just to overwhelm our opponent quickly before they have the opportunity to set up. And Shuffle Reborn is going to allow us to do that. If we have a monster in the graveyard, Shuffle Reborn is a free special summon. And again, when you combine everything with the Cyberse engine, we just need one monster on the field to just start going off and summoning just a absolute onslaught of Cyberse monsters. And so the fact that it's basically Monster Reborn, you just can't control any monsters, and then it's also card draw if we absolutely need it as well. So overall, again, Shuffle Reborn, just a wonderful addition. 3 copies of Cosmic Cyclone. Again, since we're going pure aggro here, we want to be able to just remove any of our opponent's back row. Anything that might be of a threat, Cosmic Cyclone can easily take care of. If we don't need the Cosmic Cyclone, we can pitch it for the Summoner Monk, no problem. And it's just overall a really good card. Now for the 1-ups, we have 1 Mind Control, 1 Moon Mirror Shield, and 1 Soul Charge. So Mind Control is just to get things out of the way and possibly link with them if we need to get rid of any threats. Obviously, we can't attack with the monster we Mind Control, but if our opponent has something that might be a little bit too overwhelming for us to deal with, Mind Control is a very easy way to dispose of it, and then we can link into any of our link monsters in our extra deck. Moon Mirror Shield is a 1-up because, kind of very similarly to Mind Control, if our opponent presents us with a threat that's very difficult for us to deal with, Moon Mirror Shield should more often than not be able to deal with that threat by running over that monster in battle. And Moon Mirror Shield can surprisingly be very annoying for some decks to deal with. And then lastly, Soul Charge is very important because it's essentially just our comeback card, and really, if we really need to just swarm the field with monsters, Soul Charge is going to be the way we absolutely do that. Now moving on to the trap cards, we have 3 copies of Dimensional Barrier. This should be obvious. Funny enough, now that Spirals have actually been hit by the ban list pretty significantly, you know, Pendulum Magician is forecasted to be the most popular deck, and what cards really hurt Pendulum Magician? Dimensional Barrier and Cosmic Cyclone, and this deck happens to have both of those. So again, if you have 3 copies of this deck, you're going to want to play 3 Dimensional Barrier. It's really good to just stop your opponent from being able to special summon anything out of the extra deck that isn't a link monster, and just really help slow down their plays. Next, we have 3 copies of Powerful Rebirth. The reason this is here is very similarly to the way that Shuffle Reborn is here. This is basically called the Haunted, except you're able to target a level 4 or lower, special summon it, and then you increase the level by 1, which is irrelevant for this deck, but also gives it an extra 100 attack and defense. But also, it's not just if the Powerful Rebirth is destroyed, the monster stays on the field, so that's very important. But it's good because, again, just allows us to keep establishing monsters on the board and to continuously and aggressively beat down our opponent. This is definitely something you're going to want to max out on. And then last but not least, rounding out the trap lineup, we have 3 copies of Storming Mirror Force. We need something that's a little bit more defensive, especially, you know, considering the fact that we are using structure decks here, and it's really nice to have Storming Mirror Force as an inclusion. Now, obviously, Storming Mirror Force isn't the best Mirror Force for all situations, because if our opponent has monsters that are just, you know, regular effect monsters that are going to go back to their hand and might generate them more advantage, then, you know, Storming Mirror Force isn't going to be the most ideal. However, Storming Mirror Force is incredible when you're going up against extra deck monsters, because they're going to all be sent back to the extra deck, and you're really going to be in a good position if your opponent overcommits to a lot of cards in the extra deck. So if they summon a ton of Link monsters, Xyz monsters, Synchro monsters, whatever it may be, storming Mirror Force is essentially going to be the way to get us there if we need to. But that's also why we play the Cyberse monster that's treated as Exiled Force as well, so we actually have that just spot removal in case we need to actually destroy the threat rather than bouncing it back to the hand. So that's it for the main deck lineup. It's only 40 cards, and again, this is just a template for you guys to use if you're wanting to build a deck like this. I thought this was a pretty, to me, this makes sense in terms of its synergies and the way the deck works, but again, feel free to experiment with some of the other cards in there as well, because this structure deck was actually packed with a lot of incredibly powerful cards. And then, I mean, lastly, we just have 3 Encode Talker in the extra deck, 3 Trigate Wizard, and then lastly, 3 copies of Binary Sorceress, because as we well know, those are the only cards that came in the structure deck. And you're not going to be linking into these too often. You're only going to really use it, you know, if you mind control something or if it really benefits you to do so. But it's nice that you actually have the 9 cards for your extra deck there. And if you're able to establish something like a Trigate Wizard linked to something like a Binary Sorceress, which considering the Cyberse monsters can all just spam themselves onto the board, you might be in really good shape, and it might make sense for you to do so. So guys, that's it for the deck profile. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about this $30 budget build. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always. Subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. And if you found this video helpful, consider backing me on Patreon, because just by pledging only $1 a month, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time. 1, 2, 3.